Hey guys, my name is Aldas, and in today's video I'm going to be continuing my rise and fall of Ferrari in Formula 1 with part 2. Now, apologies for the very long gap to this second episode, but I am back finally with part 2, and hopefully it'll be another very good video. Now, don't forget, if you have not checked out the first part, it will be linked above and probably in the description as well, so I highly recommend you to go check it out. And if you do enjoy the content and want to support the channel, don't forget to like and smash that subscribe button. I'm trying to go for something like 30,000 subscribers before the summer break. I know that is a crazy massive target, but if we don't aim big, then we're never gonna get there. So yeah, if you do want to support me, then just smash that subscribe button, and also check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. But yeah, let's jump into part 2 of the rise and fall of Ferrari in Formula 1. Now, the 60s in Formula 1 was a time of massive innovation, and over the decade, the cars really became unrecognizable from their predecessors. Of course, even now in 2019, the cars have changed a lot since, say, 2009, but these days, it's only really the hybrid power unit that you can say is really innovative, and whether or not it's been a positive or a negative for Formula 1 as a sport is probably a discussion for a different video, but everything else from the aerodynamics to the dimensions of the cars is less amazing engineering innovation and more adapting to a new rule set, which is trying every 4 or 5 years to try and bring more exciting racing, but somehow also failing every 4 or 5 years to try and bring more exciting racing as well. But anyway, back to Ferrari. If you compare the car from the 1960 season, the Ferrari 246 F1, to the Ferrari from the 1970 season, the Ferrari 312B, you start to notice just what a big leap F1 made during that time and how it laid out the blueprint for the future. Now, if we do compare the two Ferraris, you can really see that now cars had sponsorship logos on them, and this was really important because, of course, Formula 1 was becoming more mainstream and it was now shown on television. The engines were also moved behind the driver, the old skinny tyres and wire wheels had been ditched for a more purpose-built and wider tyre combination, and F1 cars now had started to work with aerodynamics, with front and rear wings being added to the cars. However, the truth is that none of these changes were brought in by Ferrari. Unbelievably, Ferrari, even during the 1960 season, were still using front-engine cars when teams like Lotus and Cooper had already developed mid-engined F1 cars and found a lot of success in. I mean, if you look at the picture that is on the screen right now, you can really see the Ferrari and just how prehistoric it looks with a front engine, while you can see the Lotus. It just looks a lot more modern, and Ferrari just clearly were not at the forefront of innovation. Ferrari from the mid-60s till the mid-70s, despite their large budget, had been left behind by the British teams of Lotus and Brabham. In particular Lotus, who dominated the 60s with 36 race wins from 1960 to 1969, with the legendary Jim Clark, who's considered one of the greatest drivers of all time, taking 25 of those, as well as scoring 33 pole positions. Ferrari, on the other hand, during the same period could only manage 12 wins, and by 1973 were surpassed by Lotus for the most wins in Formula 1 ever. Now, this was of course due to a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, simply the other teams were just doing a better job. The legendary designer Colin Chapman for Lotus was always ahead of anything Ferrari were doing at the time, and Ferrari were never innovators or early adapters of race-winning technology. They always just seemed to be slow to improve their cars. For example, the switch from drum brakes to disc brakes, wire wheels to alloys, the introduction of fuel injection, as well as the evolution from space frames to monocoques with the engine as a stressed member of the chassis. These are just a few of the examples. Ferrari is a great team, there's no doubt about that, but they have never in their entire history been at the forefront of innovation. I mean, even nowadays, when was the last time a Ferrari innovation actually changed or amazed anyone? Very rarely, if you ask me, and it was the same story in the 60s. As well as being slow to adapt to new technology, it's also no secret that the old man Enzo Ferrari had become very stubborn at changing his cars and was one of the reasons that they were slow to develop. Coupled with that, Ferrari's issues also weren't helped by the fact that their star driver John Surtees had left the team after a disagreement over racing at Le Mans. So Ferrari were structurally in a bit of a shambles in terms of drivers and management, and throughout all of this as well, Ferrari in the 1960s was also under financial difficulties and looking to merge. Ferrari did eventually merge with Fiat in 1969, but part of the deal was that Enzo remained 100% in control of the racing division. And by the way, this is actually the one specific detail that broke the famous Ferrari-Ford deal, as Ford were not happy to leave the racing division to Ferrari. So, rather unsurprisingly, with all of these issues, and probably more actually that the public didn't even know about, Ferrari on track had started to decline under Enzo Ferrari's helm. The old man probably started to lose his way a little bit, and in the 10 seasons from 1965 to 1974, Ferrari didn't win a single title, with only a best place finish of second 3 times during this period. This was a slump for Ferrari to say the least. However, with the help of two very special men, Ferrari would once again return to the top. Now, with the Ferrari and Fiat merger, Enzo stepped down as the managing director of the road car division. In terms of Formula 1, despite still being in charge, he also partially stepped down, and Fiat appointed a man called Luca Cordero de Montezemolo as the manager of the Ferrari Formula 1 team in 1974. Now, Luca de Montezemolo's influence is criminally underrated in Ferrari's history, and under him, Ferrari almost immediately went back up to the top with the help of one of the greatest drivers in Formula 1 history, the late Niki Lauda. Now, the story of Niki Lauda is widely known, but the signing of him by Ferrari for the 1974 season was actually a stroke of luck. Firstly, in 74, Ferrari signed Clay Regazzoni, a driver that had previously raced for the team and a driver that both Luca de Montezemolo and Enzo Ferrari knew was dependable. However, with Clay Regazzoni back at Ferrari, Enzo also inquired about Niki Lauda, who was Regazzoni's teammate in BRM the previous season. Although the 1973 season at BRM wasn't outstanding for Niki, he did show some talent, and Regazzoni backed Lauda to be signed along with him, saying that Lauda was not only quick and hard-working, but also had a real eye for developing the car. Thus, Niki Lauda found himself at Ferrari for the 1974 Formula 1 season. Unsurprisingly, the highly motivated Niki Lauda had an instant effect on Ferrari. He was no-nonsense, unfiltered and fearless when it came to car development, and told the Ferrari team exactly what they needed to hear and how to improve the car, essentially giving Ferrari a kick up the backside, and it worked. He worked coherently with the team to improve the car for 1974, and the results showed. The previous year, in 1973, Ferrari had an embarrassing finish of 6th in the Constructors, but in 74 with Lauda and Regazzoni, Ferrari finished 2nd in the championship. Now, although McLaren's Emerson Fittipaldi won the Drivers' Championship in 1974, Niki Lauda was probably one of the quickest drivers that season, and arguably would have won the title had it not been for the fact that whilst both Fittipaldi and Regazzoni retired only 3 times each, Lauda in the 74 season retired 8 times in 15 races. That has a massive impact, but nonetheless, Niki had established himself and was massively quick. The next few years for Ferrari and Niki Lauda would be some of the most memorable in Formula 1 history. In 1975, Niki Lauda was easily the best driver on the grid and won Ferrari not only the 1975 World Drivers' Championship, but they also secured the Constructors' Championship as well. Both of these would be their first after an 11-year drought. The 1976 season, however, would go down in history as probably one of the greatest seasons of all time. It had everything. 2 incredible drivers, a fierce rivalry, an almost life-ending crash, and a finish no one could have predicted. It was the culmination of one of Formula 1's greatest ever rivalries between Niki Lauda and James Hunt. Now, Lauda took a commanding lead in the championship in the early part of the season, with James Hunt in the McLaren looking like he couldn't quite match the speed and consistency of Niki. However, that all changed when midway through the season on the 1st of August, Lauda had a massive crash at the Nürburgring with his car going up in flames with Lauda stuck inside, burning alive. He was saved, just, and spent the next 6 weeks in hospital with not only burns but also lung damage that actually eventually led to his death in 2019. Whilst in hospital, he watched as James Hunt clawed his way back into the title contention, and despite the biggest of odds and the fact that he was given last rites, he returned to F1 just 6 weeks after almost dying to the Italian Grand Prix, making one of the greatest sporting comebacks of all time. Defying all the odds and racing under massive pain due to the lung damage and the burns, he continued to fight James for the title, reaching a title decider in Japan. The title decider was another thriller at the Fuji circuit under torrential rain. It ended with James Hunt taking the title by a single point after Lauda voluntarily, midway through the race, decided to retire, saying that for him, it was not worth to take the risk under those conditions. The 1976 season was a classic, and I think that is a massive understatement, by the way, and my quick run through really doesn't do it justice, but of course it was immortalised in the brilliant 2013 movie Rush, so if you've never heard of the Lauda-Hunt rivalry, the movie is a fairly accurate depiction of the rivalry and the incredible 1976 season. But really back to Ferrari, despite Lauda and Ferrari not winning the driver's title in 76, they did still take the constructor's title, and the following season Lauda came back to win the 1977 World Drivers' title and deliver Ferrari a third successive Constructors' Championship as well. However, despite all of the success in 1977, things had begun to go wrong between Niki Lauda and Ferrari. Lauda ended up leaving Ferrari after winning the championship for them, but with 2 races to go due to strained relationships between him and the team. Ferrari had decided to bring in Carlos Reutemann to pressure Lauda, and then Gilles Villeneuve to run a third car for the Canadian Grand Prix. Lauda was not happy that Ferrari were bringing extra pressure on him and bringing in new drivers, and decided to leave before the Canadian Grand Prix. The following year, Ferrari could not replicate their success without Niki Lauda and lost out to Mario Andretti and the Lotus team in their famous ground effect car, the Lotus 78. However, in 1979, Ferrari would once again reign supreme with Jody Scheckter winning the title after Carlos Reutemann left the team to go to Lotus. The 1979 season would be dominated by Ferrari as they took a 1-2 in the championship and would win the Constructors as well. However, the 1979 season would now become a distant memory for Ferrari as they would go into their biggest driver title drought in their history, not winning a single driver's title for the next 21 years. Now, strangely enough, I'm almost going to end this video saying the exact same thing I said at the end of part 1. The British teams now of McLaren and Williams would now take over the sport with some of the greatest drivers and most dominant cars in the sport's history. And once again, the disarray at Ferrari and the long drought would need to be saved by a once-in-a-lifetime driver that would not only bring Ferrari back up to the top, but would rewrite every single Formula 1 record in the book. But that part of Ferrari's history we'll leave for another episode. But there you go guys, that is the end of part 2 of my rise and fall of Ferrari in Formula 1. Now I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and also comment below of anything that you thought of Ferrari during this period, or about the video itself, or maybe about how I can improve it in the future. And also don't forget to check out my social medias, Instagram and Twitter will be above. But once again guys, I really hope you did enjoy this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.